Hey everybody, welcome back to the ZSuites YouTube channel. What we're going to discuss today is how to fix and build your credit for free. Now, it's important to note how vital credit is to your life, whether you use it right now or you don't. Some people like to follow the cash is king method of living, and that's fine until it isn't. You can have a whole bunch of cash, but that doesn't stop you from getting denied credit in the future. And what that does is prevent you from making purchases like, let's say, buying a house, simply because they have a high price tag. So what's credit and why is it important to you? You can think of it as a financial adult report card. And it asks questions like, can I trust the person with the money I'm gonna let them borrow? Do they know all their obligations? And most importantly, are they gonna pay me back on time? The answer to all of these questions directly relates to your access to credit cards, mortgages, auto loans, and the underlying interest rate tied to each of these. And the more responsible you are, the more money people will let you borrow at a lower interest rate, which translates into direct savings to you. But let's discuss this in the most practical manner that most of us experience credit, as a car loan. You go to a dealership, want something nice, and you get asked, how much can you afford a month? Really, this killer question of how much can you afford a month? What they're really saying is, what number can I tell you right now that will make you comfortable making this purchase? But they don't emphasize how they'll stretch out the term of the loan just to get that number down at a higher overall cost to you. So let's discuss a good and bad example of how credit is used or not used. So you go to the dealership and say, I can only spend $350 a month and my credit is, I don't really know, probably average. What's that gonna get you? Probably a 9% interest rate, but you're gonna get sold on a 84-month payback period. Your payment is only $320. Sign me up. That's under my $350 that I had to spend. But what is the car going to cost you? That $20,000 car is going to cost you $27,000 at the end of this all. Now, the good approach of this is going in and saying, I know I have good credit and I don't want to pay the car off in over 5 years. What's that going to get you? Probably a 3.5% interest rate with a 60-month payback period. Your payment might be $360 a month, but the overall cost of that car will be only $22,000. So what did being mindful of your credit in this situation do for you? It saved you $5,000 on a $20,000 purchase. And it also freed yourself from 2 more years of having to pay that car note. Now just imagine if you were a subprime borrower and your interest rate was even higher. Or if you were going for a mortgage and you were doing that same scenario on a $300,000 purchase. You can understand how this amplifies, and you need to be mindful of your credit. It is a tool. Don't let it go to waste just because you're not utilizing it now. So how do you get to know your credit? Fortunately, the internet makes it easy to monitor your credit, see what's changing, develop a plan to attack the debt you have, and utilize the credit available to you in a more mindful manner. First thing I want you to do is actually pull your credit report so you can see what's on it. There's a link in the description below that will allow you 1 free pull from each of the 3 credit bureaus. There's Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian. And what this will do is give you a true snapshot of all of your balances, who they're with, the amount, any late payments, collections, derogatory marks, etc. All the things that you'll need to know that are forming the credit that you have right now. That way we know what to attack and how. Second, after you look at your report, I want you to dispute anything negative. The Fair Credit Reporting Act gives you this right. The burden of proof, or whoever is responsible for proving your debt, is on the lender. Think of it logically. If I owe Joe money and I said, I don't want to pay you anymore, and we called the credit police and they said, what's going on here? And Joe says he owes me money. Who is going to have to prove that? Is it going to be me, the person saying I don't owe them money, or is it going to be Joe's responsibility to show that I actually owe him? It's their responsibility to have the right documentation that proves that you owe them for that specific amount. Now, Joe isn't Joe. Joe is likely some collections company that bought your debt for pennies on the dollar. And sometimes they lose paperwork, the company goes out of business, or even just forget to respond to the inquiry in time. And what happens? Boom, it falls off your credit report and you reap instant benefits, all from just taking a little bit of effort and start paying attention to your credit. Third, I want you to pay off all your collections or past due accounts. But wait, do not see that you owe $2,000 and say, oh, I'm gonna write a check for $2,000. You need to learn to negotiate with these companies. You can send them an email and be sure that when you talk to them, get an official letter from them saying that if I pay off their balance, they'll remove any derogatory marks off of my credit report. And also, understand that these companies did pay a fraction of the price for your debt. If you had a $1,000 debt with Chase, this collection company probably paid $100 for your debt. So when you go to them, say, oh, I only have $150, what can you do? You'll be surprised how quickly they'll say, give me $300. It's crazy, it happens all the time. So please negotiate your debt. Understand that this is a business and you are a business as well. You need to act in the most advantageous way for yourself. And what happens again? Boom, another account off the list, extra money saved for yourself, and hopefully another jump in your credit score. But it isn't always about paying off a lower balance. Sometimes you have a late payment, call them, ask for a goodwill adjustment, and have them try to remove the late payment from your credit score. What's the worst they can do? All they can say is no. So my advice is to you is negotiate and ask. So now we're at a point where we need to start building our credit. We got all the old stuff taken care of. We need to know how to push our credit score higher. We got to a point where it's level. Now it's time to raise. And my first piece of advice is get a credit monitoring app like Credit Karma. That way you know when new accounts pop on your credit, when there's new inquiries, balance is changed, or there's any late payments that show up, you're aware of this stuff. Treat it like a bank account. You know that charge, you know where this was spent, or if you don't, you dispute it immediately. With your credit, treat it the same way. Don't let these things lag on. Time is not gonna do anything but hurt you. Now we can break down how your score is actually calculated. 35% is focused on payment history, 30% to amounts owed, 10% to new credit, 15% to the length of credit history, and 10% to credit mix. You can see where it's highly concentrated in payment history and the amount owed. But let's first discuss the three smaller ones. That way we can see how they impact you and how to manage them. First, there's the length of credit history. This is self-explanatory. The longer you have your credit open, the better for you. And this is often the starting point of most people's journeys. You can only grow this with time. Unfortunately, there's no shortcuts. But if you don't have any credit and you can't get any unsecured credit, I suggest getting the secured card from a bank. And what this is you put $500 down and the credit that you utilize goes towards that $500 limit that the bank will give you. You're essentially using your own money as credit, but the reporting agency sees that you have a $500 credit card that you open today, and you can keep that open for the rest of your life. This establishes a history of credit and it gets the ball rolling. Now, if you're a little bit further in your credit path, it's important to keep accounts open. If you're not gonna use that credit card, don't close it, just don't use it. Only thing closing it will do will decrease your amount of available credit and decrease the average life of your credit, which will both negatively impact your score. Also, avoid getting credit cards just to have credit cards. Not only will this shorten your average life, but it might also deter lenders from extending more credit to you because you might not be able to handle all the obligations that you now have at once. The second piece of your score is new credit. And what this means is every time you ask a lender for credit, there's a hard pull that happens on your credit score. And if you have too many hard pulls, it starts to look a little negative in the eyes of a lender. If you see somebody is reaching out to 10 of your friends for money and then they come to you, would you want to lend them money? You'll probably think that they don't have any money at all and you're not going to feel safe extending any amount of money to them. It's the same way. You need to stop thinking of it as something crazy and mysterious. It's pretty basic. If you do stuff that makes people nervous of lending you money, your score is likely going to be bad. The third piece is credit mix. And this is, do you have credit cards, auto loans, mortgages, retail credit? It's all the different ways that you can borrow. And really, this will change as your life develops, so I wouldn't put a lot of emphasis on this. Just let it happen. But what you need to focus on is the two things that make up a majority of your score, which is payment history and amounts owed. First, let's discuss payment history, and let's say it loud and clear: pay your bills on time. One more time. Pay your bills on time. This is not a hard concept, people, but a lot of people, this is where they mess up. Pay what you owe before it's due, period. This is where you're tested how well you know your own obligations. So what are a few tips that I have for you in order to manage your payment history? First, I want you to try to align the due dates of a lot of your bills that you do manually. That way you know around a certain time that subconsciously you'll remember that you need to pay your bills. Me personally, I set up a lot of my due dates for many different types of credit to happen around or on the beginning of the month. That way I know on the first, that's the money going out time. I can sit down and I know I'm supposed to look at everything that I have and money should be going out. Second, set up auto pay for the minimum amount, even if that's not all you're going to pay. Trust me, you won't be mad if you see a random $45 charge that comes from paying your credit card automatically, but you will be mad when you have a 45-point drop in your credit score because you missed a payment. Next, there's amounts owed. You want to have a lot of credit available to you, but you don't want to use it all. Unfortunately, with loans, you can't really do anything about it. You have an established amount that you agree to borrow and you pay it down over time. However, with credit cards, you have an amount available for you to use and the rest is on you. There's a rule of thumb to keep your credit balance max 30% of what's available to you. Ideally, keep it under 10%, as closest to zero as possible. This shows that you're conscious of the credit that's available to you and you aren't just out racking up a balance buying things because you have a blank checkbook. It's easy to spend when your bank account isn't affected immediately. But in a month or two from now when that bill comes due and you don't have enough cash, then you get to fall into the spiral, into the tornado of now I have a carried balance. Now there's interest and penalties. Now my balance is even higher. And eventually it's going to be too much for me to handle. The account defaults and goes into collections. I know it sounds easy to avoid for some, but unfortunately it sounds all too familiar to just as much, if not more. So please pay your bills on time and frequently. If you can pay down your balance before the billing cycle ends, companies will report a lower ending balance, which really matters, thus a lower utilization rate. And also, don't be afraid to ask for credit limit increases. If after 6 months of consistent usage and on-time payments, you can ask for a limit increase. And what that will do is boost your available credit and directly lower your utilization rate. Both things that will positively impact your credit score. So what are some overarching tips in building your credit? First is living within your means. If you can afford something in cash and you utilize credit to purchase it, you should never be short when the bill comes due. Second, take your credit score seriously. Even if you aren't using it now or you think your credit score is irrelevant, when you go for a home loan in the future and you get denied because your credit score is too low, it will be relevant. So get rid of that negative mindset that will only delay you from progression. Third, the holy grail. Pay your bills on time, frequently, and keep your balances low. If you make multiple payments throughout the month, you'll end up lowering your ending balance, which translates into a higher available credit amount and a lower utilization rate. Now think, 70% of your credit score is based off that one sentence alone. So if there's one thing that you're gonna take away, it's that. Please rewind the video, write it down, engrave it in your brain. Pay your bills on time, frequently, and keep your balances low. Next, you need to understand DTI, or debt to income ratio. A good score is one thing, but if your income can't handle the level of debt that you're at, it's not likely that you'll get extended any more debt if you ask for it. So please don't rack up any debt that's unnecessary. Keep the balances that you have low and use your credit wisely. And on top of that, work to increase your income. That way you can amplify the benefits of having a good score. Lastly, you need to understand credit so you can position yourself to make the best decisions possible. The opportunities honestly become endless. Yeah, I can have a set amount of cash, but why not use other people's money? Why would I want to use my own money if I can leverage somebody else's willingness to hand me some cash? Obviously, leverage is risky, but calculated risk is essential to scaling your wealth. Now, everything is circumstantial, but what this does show is that the availability of credit holds significant value and it can make or break your path to financial freedom. So please pay attention to your credit score and work on maintaining and increasing your score over time. My name is Ricky. Welcome to ZSuites. We'll see you at the top.